melhor ser alegre que ser triste. Alegria é melhor coisa que existe. É assim como a luz no coração. Mas pra fazer um samba com beleza é preciso um bocado de tristeza. É preciso um bocado de tristeza. Senão não se faz um samba, não. Fazer samba não é contar piada. E quem faz samba assim não é de nada. O bom samba é uma forma de oração.
During the 1920s, while Europe was continuing to suffer the wounds of the First World War, in American cities at least, it was a boom time. Americans were spending money, they were dancing, they were partying, they were buying cars, they were buying bathtub gin, and they were buying stock, lots of stock. The stock market, the New York Stock Exchange, had become a national pastime, and Americans couldn't get enough of it. And the favorite stock of the day were in these new radio companies. Radio was like the internet of the 1920s, an industry that had come from nowhere. And the number one glamour stock was RCA, which in just a few years went from $1.50 a share to $600 a share. Americans couldn't get enough of it.
It was a classic stock market bubble. Then, on Black Thursday, October 24th, 1929, the bubble burst. Prices plunged. The downward spiral proved unstoppable. Eight hours after the market had closed, the ticker tape machines were still tapping out the bad news. The stock market crash started America's slide into despair.
During the 30s here, it was a complete and utter collapse. From the people's point of view, it was despair as values and prices spiraled ever onward, downward. It left them with no ability to earn, no ability to repay, no ability to spend, no ability to consume. Everything went down. The farm implement sale, the clothing store, the merchant. Everything spiraled downward, and of course with it went the banks.
People panicked. They rushed to withdraw their hard-earned savings.
Run on a bank means lines through the lobby and out the front door and down around the block. People waiting day and night to get up to see if they could withdraw their cash.
The millions that could not lost everything.
If you look at the period of time from 29 on, about half the banks in the United States closed.
The government failed to halt the downward spiral. In fact, it made things worse.
Private construction virtually ceases. Mills and factories shut down. Railroads come to a virtual standstill. Millions of Americans, men, women, and children, wait in the cold, on bread lines, in soup kitchens. 3 million Americans are ex-wage earners, unemployed. And the ranks of the unemployed ought to soar to 15 million.
Banks collapsed. Industry ground to a stop. Millions were out of work. In Britain, working men, many of them war veterans, marched the length of the country to petition the government for the simple right to work. In Italy, Spain, and Germany, they marched to a different drum. With the failure of capitalism, fascism cast its shadow ever wider.
Fascism is a very rational system. It is an instrument by the ruling plutocracy to distract the people with the accoutrements of a false revolution. There's always a false populism, and there's a lot of goose-stepping, and there's a lot of manipulation of symbols and sentiments and love of the state and the like. Much of politics is the rational use of irrational symbols. So fascism, the attention that when people study Italian fascism or Nazism especially, they focus on it as a kind of insane movement that just happened, carried on by this maniac Adolf Hitler, and the Germans were just went out of their heads and were led astray. In fact, what they tried to do is direct the real grievances of the German people toward irrelevant enemies.
Die Parteien versprachen den Himmel auf Erden.
And when the fascists came into power, they cut wages by 50%. They destroyed every labor union. They destroyed every opposition party and every newspaper, closed them down. They abolished all inheritance taxes for the rich or cut them drastically. They abolished all cartel taxes for the corporations. Pretty much what's being done here without having to go politically all that far. So fascism is an instrument whereby the plutocracy can control and hopefully affect a final solution to the class struggle. You totally shatter and destroy and enslave the working class, and people just have to take it. What substantiates what I just said, that fascism is an instrument of the plutocracy, is the way the plutocracy acted toward the fascists. Not just the German plutocracy, which gave Hitler enormous sums of money, which enabled him to go all over the country, but also the plutocracy of the United States, where all sorts of eminent members of that plutocracy openly supported the fascists.
Among the titans of Wall Street, there was a tremendous amount of sympathy for Adolf Hitler and for Mussolini, coupled with a great deal of fear about what they perceived as a rising red threat and the threat from unions. So they were largely sympathetic with what they saw going on over there. And of course, these people and the attorneys working for them, like the Dulles brothers, who would later go on to run the State Department and the CIA, were very much in tune on this sort of thing. Put them in an awkward position, of course, later on when they ended up having to fight against Hitler. But that never really, I think, changed their fundamental belief, which was that they shared common cause with industrialists everywhere. In fact, many of these people were involved with companies that had operations in Germany and in occupied territories of Germany. We later saw the prosecution of a number of them under the Trading with the Enemy Act, and this included Prescott Bush, the grandfather of George W. Bush.
It's evident today that corporations raise and spend huge amounts of money on the political campaigns of presidents and congressmen. These corporations also spend huge amounts of money hiring former government officials to lobby Congress to pass laws that mainly benefit their interests.
There's no doubt in my mind that the political apparatus of the United States government is much more beholden to the powerful lobbying interests, the companies that can write those big fat checks, campaign contributions and that sort of thing. You can see it every day. The politicians will give speeches, very good speeches in some cases, saying all the things that the voters want to hear. But then when it comes time to vote on an issue, they quite often will go directly opposite to what they said, and they will vote in favor of the positions that the corporations want and the lobbyists want.
Just as Marxism called for workers of the world to unite, a different totalitarian ideology calls for corporations of the world to unite. Not only unite with each other, consolidation, but unite with governments, with states. Thus, when corporations unite with the state, it is known as fascism. Fascism develops when the state initiates the merger of corporate power with state power, as what happened in Nazi Germany and Mussolini's Italy. The key words being merge and power. Fascism is thus not a merger of the state and corporations per se. It's a merger of their power. Secondly, it's the merged power that governs, not either the state or the corporations per se. Today, however, with multinational corporations growing into entities, some larger than states, we have emerging a totally unprecedented form of fascism, what could be called corporate fascism. Under corporate fascism, corporations are so huge that they have the financial ability to initiate powerful lobbying influences over governments, even the Congress and presidency of the United States. Thus, even though such multinationals and the U.S. states are able to remain distinct, again, it's their merged power that increasingly supersedes the will of we the people.
In Scandinavia, no hotel in fucking Sweden I've been to in the last year is no, it's all non-smoking, no, because of the secondary smoke, isn't it? It's secondary smoke, yeah, it's what we should be worried about. It's very, because, scientists, experts and researchers have done, research and discovered that secondary smoke, it's a very big issue for me. I think about the future of the human race and what's happening in the world today. Secondary smoke's a real issue for me. Secondary smoke. I'm not particularly worried about the fact that recently the two most powerful nations illegally invaded a Middle East country under false pretenses so that it could steal their natural resources and implement permanent military bases to start more theatres of conflict so that it could implement a third world war to create a planetary fascist police state. It's secondary smoke that is it's a real problem for me, Because sometimes when you go out, your clothes get smelly, don't they? And then you have to wash them when you get back. I mean, that's a real chore for my existence, I'm not worried about the fact that the World Bank or the IMF go into third world countries, put them into unfathomable debt so it can steal their natural resources, destroy the culture and implement them into the global banking system. It's secondary smoke. Because it's everywhere. And, I didn't choose to smoke and I could be affected. Really? There's people from Chernobyl still alive, for fuck's sake. They look weird, but they're still here. And now we make them smoke outside.